In light of the variations and the versions, how certain or sure are we that our Bibles match what God gave the original writers? Dr. Dwyer, will you begin?
As we write and speak, the year is AD 2012. In relation to time and history, we are approximately 1,900 years removed from the last original writing of the books contained in the Bible. A student of ancient literature would be alarmed and stymied were he required to study any other ancient writing, since there is so little material available. But that is not so with the Bible. As Bruce Metzger said, I quote, "In contrast with these figures, that is, the extant copies of other ancient writings, the textual critic of the New Testament is embarrassed by the wealth of his material," unquote. No other ancient writing has been so studied, analyzed, and critiqued as has the Bible. No ancient writing has been so preserved to study, analyze, and critique as the Bible. Entire disciplines of study have been given to this very task, and the Bible endures and thrives. Perhaps the words of Sir Frederick Kenyon appropriately summarize it best by saying, and I quote, "The Christian can take the whole Bible in his hand and say without fear or hesitation that he holds in it the true Word of God, handed down without essential loss from generation to generation throughout the centuries," unquote.
Dr. Piccirilli, will you continue to help give us confidence that our Bibles match what God gave the original writers?
Well, probably the most important issue here is whether the text of the original has been preserved. I'm going to confine my answer to that. Start with the fact that the writings of the Scriptures are thousands of years old, and we do not possess the originals that came from the hands of Moses or Paul or the others. Furthermore, they were copied by hand over and over and over from one generation to another until modern printing began in the 15th century. So the question is, can we be confident that the very Word of God was preserved throughout this process? Indeed, we can. We have solid grounds for confidence in the preservation of the original text. For one thing, we trust that God, in His providence, has preserved the text. It wouldn't make sense for God to inspire the original writers and then let His word be lost to us. For another thing, the inspired writings were highly regarded as the Word of God and were therefore given special care in keeping them and copying them carefully. And equally important, the actual evidence bears all of this out. There are so many, many ancient copies of the text that a comparison of them shows with nearly 100% certainty what the original said. Take the Greek New Testament, for example. There are more than 5,000 manuscripts of at least parts of the New Testament, and all of them say essentially the same thing. Please know that in this matter, the New Testament has far better attestation than any other ancient writing in the world. F.F. Bruce has written a little book entitled, "The New Testament Documents, Are They Reliable?" I recommend that book. He compares several ancient writings about the same age as the New Testament, including those of Caesar, the historian Livy, Tacitus, Thucydides, and Herodotus. In all such cases, only a few manuscripts of their writings have survived. And like all manuscripts, they differ in various ways. In spite of that, the scholars are confident that they know, for the most part, just what those writers actually said. With the New Testament, however, there are thousands of manuscripts. And so we are fully confident that we know just what the original words were. Of course, the scribes in their copying made mistakes, as any human copyists will do. We who believe in the inspiration of the Bible have never said that scribes were inspired, only the original human authors. But in that great horde of New Testament manuscripts, there is also a great commonality that shows what the original actually said. In short, God in His providence has preserved His word. Of almost any version I might hold up, whether in English or in some other language, I can say without doubt, this is the Word of God.
Because this is so important and we want our confidence to be established in light of the variations in the versions we have today, I'd like Dr. Marbury to continue to speak into that topic.
Thank you very much. Modern Christians can be very confident that the Bibles they read today in various modern languages convey accurately the message that God gave to the original writers many centuries ago. No other collection of books has been as closely examined or as carefully guarded as have the books of the Bible. The earliest surviving fragments were produced within 50 years of the completion of the New Testament. The earliest surviving complete copies were produced during the 5th century. As the other speakers have pointed out, we have more copies, earlier copies, and better copies of the books of the Bible than we have for any other collection of books from the ancient world. How can modern believers be sure that the translations they read today are accurate? How can they know that what they are reading is really the message that God gave to His children long ago? It is important to note that the process of Bible translation is not done in secret by a small group of people. Modern translations are made by the best, most well-trained scholars representing different denominations. The translations they publish are carefully examined by many Bible scholars from different theological positions. In this atmosphere, it would be impossible to introduce significant changes into the text without attracting attention of Christians around the world. New translations are not made because the Word of God has changed. The Bible has not changed. Two things have, however, changed. First, our knowledge and understanding of the Bible is more complete today than it was in previous centuries. Modern translations can reflect this better understanding. Second, modern languages change. English today is different from the English of past centuries. The same thing is true of Spanish, French, German, and other modern languages. Modern translations are often more readable and understandable for the people. And then finally, I want to note that modern Christians can have confidence in the Bibles that they read because of the continuing work of God. God has always preserved His Word. He continues to preserve it today, and He will preserve it in the future.